Hi, we're going to read chapter 14, verse 1. And it came to pass in the days of Amraphel, king of Shinar, Arioch, king of Elasar, Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, and Tidal, king of nations, that these made war with Bera, king of Sodom, and with Bersha, king of Gomorrah, Shinab, king of Admah, and Shemeber, king of Zebolim, and the king of Bela, which is Zoar. And these were joined together in the valley of Sodom, which is the salt sea. 12 years they served Chedorlaomer, and in the 13th year they rebelled. And in the 14th year came Chedorlaomer and the kings that were with him, and smote the Rephaims in Ashtaroth Karnaim, and the Zumims in Ham, and the Emims in Shaveh Kiriathim, and the Horites in their Mount Seir unto El Paran, which is by the wilderness. And they returned and came out to En Mishpat, which is Kadesh, and smote all the country of the Amalekites, and also the Amorites that dwelt in Hazion Tamar. And there went out the king of Sodom, and the king of Gomorrah, and the king of Admah, and the king of Zebolim, and the king of Bela, the same as Zoar, and they joined battle with them in the vale of Siddim, with Chedorlaomer, the king of Elam, and with Tidal, king of nations, and Amraphel, king of Shinar, and Arioch, king of Elasar, 4 kings with 5. And the vale of Siddim was full of slime pits, and the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled and fell there, and they that remained fled to the mountain. And they took all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah, and all the victuals, and went their way. And they took Lot, Abram's brother's son, who dwelt in Sodom, and his goods, and departed. And there came one that had escaped, and told Abram the Hebrew, for he dwelt in the plain of Mamre the Amorite, brother of Eshcol, and brother of Aner, and they were confederate with Abram. And when Abram heard that his brother was taken captive, he armed his trained servants, born in his own house, 318, and pursued them unto Dan. And he divided himself against them, he and his servants, by night, and smote them, and pursued them unto Hobah, which is on the left hand of Damascus. And he brought back all the goods, and also brought again his brother Lot, and his goods, and the women also, and the people. And the king of Sodom went out to meet him after his return from the slaughter of Chedorlaomer, and of the kings that were with him in the valley of Shaveh, which is the king's dale. And Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought forth bread and wine, and he was the priest of the Most High God. And he blessed him and said, Blessed be Abram of the Most High God, possessor of heaven and earth. And blessed be the Most High God, which hath delivered thine enemies into thy hand. And he gave him tithes of all. And the king of Sodom said unto Abram, Give me the persons, and take the goods to thyself. And Abram said to the king of Sodom, I have lifted up mine hand unto the Lord, the Most High God, the possessor of earth, heaven and earth, that I will not take from a thread even to a shoe latchet, and that I will not take anything that is thine, lest thou should say, I have made Abram rich, save only that which the young men have eaten, and the portion of the men which were with me, Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre, let them take their portion. Hi. This is one of the first times that we run into a lot of these Old Testament names of people that are in languages that nobody alive has spoken for 2,000 plus years. And there are a few scholars who know how to pronounce these things, but even they understand something. Most of these names are guesses at the very best. So don't get too hung up on trying to remember the names of these people. The basic story is that this fellow, Chedorlaomer, sorry about that, I'm sure I did it wrong, but whatever, he was the king of an area. Now in those days, kings were just a title of the ruler of a village or a town. They didn't have anybody elected. They didn't have anything great or wonderful. If there was 100 people living beside some spring, they probably had a king. If there was 500 people living off on some little dinky valley up on the hill and there was a creek running through, they had a king. If there was a couple of thousand people in some village somewhere, they had a king. And so king didn't necessarily mean like king of England or king of anything, king of Russia or emperor or whatever. It was just the title of whoever was the local head honcho. And this Chedorlaomer was a fairly powerful guy for where he was at the time he was there. And there were a bunch of communities over which he had power. He exacted tribute. Tribute meant that if you pay me, I won't come and beat you up. And so these villages did this for 12 years, and then they rebelled against him. The next year, he got 4 other kings, friends of his, guys who were kings of neighboring valleys and towns and whatever, and they went out and they fought against these people that rebelled and conquered them. And in the process, when taking Sodom, the village, city, whatever, I mean, a city to them was anything with houses in it. So if it had 10 houses, it probably could have been called a city. Anything else had tents. And they took Lot. He was at that time living in Sodom. Knowing how unrighteous it was, he was living in Sodom. At one point in one scripture it says he was sitting in the gate, and the only people who sat in the gates were people who were administrators in the city. So Lot wasn't doing the very best he should have been doing. And one of the people who was part of Lot's group escaped and told Abram. Abram then armed those people who were born within his own house, within his own family. And there were over 300 of them. So obviously he didn't have a tiny place. He obviously had a lot of people. And they went and they fought against these kings and defeated them, captured, took Lot. It says Lot, his brother. He means his brother's son. But they had a different way of stating relationships. And then, having captured all of the goods and all of the people, he was met at one point. Abram was met at one point by 2 people. First one was Melchizedek, who's noted as the king of Salem, which Salem became Jerusalem later, and he was the great priest of righteousness. Melchizedek was, to whom Abraham paid tithes. Now, tithing was 1/10 of his property, 1/10 of his increase. You do not pay that to somebody who is your equal. You do not pay that to somebody who did you a favor. You pay that to somebody you recognize as your presiding officer. And so Abram recognized Melchizedek for his righteousness, recognized him for his righteous leadership, and paid him a tithe because he recognized that was required. And Abram then met with the king of Sodom, and the king of Sodom said, "We'll give you back the people, you keep the goods." And Abram said, "No, that isn't how it's going to work. You take the goods, and I'll take my people. And you can have your people, because I've covenanted that I'm not going to take anything that's yours. I don't want to have anything to do with you in any way, shape, or form," is what he was saying. But he didn't say that in quite as many words. He didn't want to have anything that was unrighteous. And he knew that Sodom was corrupt to the core, didn't want to have anything to do with it. And he said, I from a thread to a shoe latch. In other words, he wasn't going to take one single thread or equivalent of part of a shoelace from the king of Sodom. It tells you how much he wanted to avoid having anything to do with that entire community. There was a really good reason for that. We'll learn how unrighteous that whole place was shortly.